I got a teaching opportunity here at Bradwell State School, um, and that's how we ended up in a small town by the name of Baralaba in central Queensland. All over the place. Well, our first port of call was Townsville, then we went down to Brisbane, then up to Bilawila, and then finally in Baralaba. Yeah, when we finally decided to make that decision, to engage in the process, the first thing we did, like with any South African or anyone that wants to migrate, you look at, is there any family or friends in Australia? And we found out that one of Lily's cousins live in Townsville. And so that's why we decided to go to Townsville. We didn't come with a job. We came with $650 in our back pocket and 4 suitcases and a baby in diapers, another one about to go off diapers, and that's how we came to Australia.
I'm Dr. Chamonix Blanche, ex-corporate and academical, turned CEO and board member of several companies, and mother of 4 little extraordinary kids. But it wasn't that long ago that I lacked the confidence, the know-how, and the time to focus on designing and really going after the life that I so wanted to live. A life of freedom, of fairness, and of being fair dinkum to who I really was and what I wanted to get out of this fleeting time that we have on Mother Earth. Fast forward to many lessons learned and moving halfway around the world to the most amazing country, you'll see the life that I now live. One that gives me more safety and freedom than I ever thought would be possible, and that really only existed as a daydream while I was living in South Africa. I created Chamonix TV to give you true spot advice on how you can also live a life in this amazing country, and so that you can see how another couple like us now live in Australia with 4 little kids here in Down Under. And I'll be providing you with step-by-step strategies so that you can make your Aussie dream a reality too. If you're a keen future Aussie who's looking to create a life that excites you and offers you safety, freedom, and opportunity, you have come to the right place, my friend. Welcome aboard. Hi, Jurie and Lilli. Thank you so much for joining us today, all the way from central Queensland. Now, please, before we start, explain to us where exactly is central Queensland and what do you mean where? Like, is it a little town? Is it a big city?
Central Queensland is basically a geographical area that stretches from the coast to the border of Northern Territory. It is about 500 kilometers, roughly about 500 kilometers in width. And it's, like I said, it stretches all the way from the Coral Sea to the Northern Territory. So towns like Birdsville, Mackay, Rockhampton, Banana, Emerald, all of these towns are within the Central Queensland district.
And how did you land there?
It is a long story. So I got a teaching opportunity here at Bradwell State School, and that's how we ended up in a small town by the name of Baralaba in central Queensland.
How small is small? Give us a comparison in like South Africa. What kind of town is a similar size, would you say?
Well, smaller than the town that I grew up in, which is Leeudoringstad.
Okay, that
small.
Then is
350 people.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how near or how far is your nearest sort of bigger town center? I assume you have a grocery store in town,
yes.
But then for anything bigger like Bunnings or those kinds of shops, how far do you have to go?
Well, the closest Woolworths to us is about 100 kilometers, and the closest business center is 150 kilometers from us.
Okay, wow. That's interesting. I know that Rockhampton area quite well. Well, we recently visited there. We drove all around Australia in a motorhome. And so we went through that part of the world, and it is so beautiful. So I think you are so blessed to be living in such a green, tropical, lush climate. So how long have you been in Australia for?
It is now a little bit more than 5 years.
Almost 5 years. 5 years will be in April.
Oh yeah, 16th of April will be 5 years.
And that's all in Barella?
No. All over.
All over the place. Well, our first port of call was Townsville, then we went down to Brisbane, then up to Billawila, and then finally in Barella.
Okay, wow. And that's all because of job changes, I assume?
Yeah, so when we decided to migrate, or when we finally decided to make that decision, to engage in the process, the first thing we did, like with any South African or anyone that wants to migrate, you look at, is there any family or friends in Australia? And we found out that one of Lilli's cousins live in Townsville, and so that's why we decided to go to Townsville. That was our first, like I said, our first port of call. But we landed in the middle of the nickel mine crisis. So there was a 15% unemployment rate when we landed in Townsville.
Wow.
So there was no jobs for us to take up, like even picking up trolleys or picking up trash or waitering or anything like that. There was nothing available for us. We didn't come with a job. We came with $650 in our back pocket and 4 suitcases and a baby in diapers, another one about to go off diapers, and that's how we came to Australia.
But just want to say, I think we came with a South African assumption that you can come in and get a job, and we did not know that if Australia says you need a specific ticket or a card, they will not touch you if you do not have that. And we came with your skill as a teacher, thinking even if you don't have the registration yet, that we will be able to get a job for you.
Yeah, but then no. Not doing our research, we landed here and realized that it's going to take 12 weeks for the Queensland College of Teachers to process my registration. And so for the first 12 weeks, no school will even look at me for teaching or for any teaching thing. However, I did some teacher aiding at a school, 1 or 2 schools. So if it wasn't for our friends that opened up their house for us and the fact that we came on a permanent residency visa, which included Medicare and all the social support, we would not have made it.
That is an incredible story. So you came, the permanent residency visa was linked to your skill as a teacher, is that right?
Yes. Yeah. So secondary teacher, got a 189 permanent residency visa, and that's what allowed us to basically came to Australia. So as soon as we landed in Sydney and our passport got a Sydney airport chap on it, we were permanent residents.
What an amazing feeling, eh? Wow. So you spent 12 weeks at least, from what I understand, without a job in the beginning?
Yeah. So like I said, I did 1 or 2 days of teacher aiding. I couldn't find a job, so it was a really humbling process for me. It went through a lot of emotions because of that. I realized that there was actually that I can be quite an angry person. So because I think the anger was because of the frustration that I'm not getting a job,
not being able to look after your family,
provide for the family. Yes. And so for the first 12 weeks, except for the 1 or 2 days of teacher aiding, I didn't have a job. But we stayed in Townsville for 6 weeks. Then our friends basically asked us to move along. Although we wanted to go and stay with our cousins or Lily's cousins, by the time we ended up in Townsville, they already moved down to Brisbane. But thankfully, in the process, we made friends through a church, and they opened up their house for us to go and stay with them. So it was the people that we've never seen before that opened up their house for us. And we only knew them through WhatsApp chats and WhatsApp conversations and Facebook and Skyping. It's a couple from Kenya, but they just, like I said, they just open up their hearts and their home for us. but in about, staying with him for about 6 weeks, or at the end of the 5th week, we felt that no, things are getting a bit awkward. They would like us to move along. And so we reached out to Lilli's cousin. As I said, they by that stage moved down to Brisbane, and they were gracious enough to buy plane tickets for us, and we shipped down to Brisbane. Yeah, so that's how we ended up in Brisbane.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then I got a job as a receptionist, so we were able to at least put some food on the table and rent a flat.
Yes.
Very small unit. So that is, we had a rocky start at the beginning, but then your registration was finalized. You started to get TRS work, supply teacher, and that put us on the path of getting a permanent position and moving up to below. Yeah.
So when you were doing your receptionist job, was Jurie looking after the kids?
Yes. Yeah, so that was quite an interesting time as well, because we didn't have a vehicle, or we haven't bought a vehicle at that stage. So we were using friends of ours, pastor's second vehicle, and it's an old diesel vehicle, and the battery wasn't going. Yeah, the battery was about to die. We didn't have enough money to get a new battery. So what I would do is I would take the battery out every single evening to charge it on a battery charger. So the next morning, if need be, if the school calls me and say, listen, we need you as a TRS, I can quickly put it in the vehicle, get the vehicle going, drop Lily off by the bus station so she can get to her job, drop the kids off by the daycare center so that I can go and do my TRS job. So just hold on. Ivan, alsjeblieft my sien now.
The other thing I think that was very interesting to us is we came again with our South African mindset. How will we get to work? We need a vehicle, but the public transport system here is really good. So I traveled the hour into the Brisbane CBD section by train. So it was some mornings when I know he was really tired, I would just leave him a note and say, it's okay, I took the bus, because I could walk to the bus station, but the train station was 5 kilometers. So he had to take me to the train station.
Yes.
But some mornings I was very gracious, like, no, let him and the boys sleep and I will just walk to the bus station. It was the same amount of time. It was an hour and 10 minutes to get to my work every morning.
How sweet of you. Yeah. So how long did you then stay in Brisbane for?
5 months.
Was it 5 months?
Yeah, about 5 months, yeah.
And then what made you move? Was that because you got a teaching job?
During that stage, my dad gave us money to buy a vehicle. So we were able to buy an old 2005.
Yeah.
05 Ford Focus. And
that's okay.
It's all right. And in this time, I got a contract at a Christian college down in the Gold Coast. It was a 6-week contract, because I did a bachelor's degree in commerce first, and then I did a PGCE, a postgrad certificate in education. So my majors are actually in tourism and business, as well as recreation sciences. So this Christian college wanted me because I had the business and the accounting background, and the teacher that went on leave her subjects area were for 11 and 12 business and accounting. So that's where I did my first teaching stint, you could say. At this Christian college, I met a Namibian, and his mom worked at Redeemer Lutheran College in Bilawila. And he said, no, they're looking for teachers, just flick your CV through. And that's how I ended up getting a job in Bilawila, and that's how we ended up in central Queensland.
Okay, and that was a more permanent job?
Yeah, so it was it's also a private school. It's a Christian Lutheran private school. So the name is Redeemer Lutheran College. So they gave me it was a contract, but it was a job. And because it was a more permanent job, or it could become a permanent job, that's why we felt, no, we need to move, because they paid for our move and everything, from Brisbane to Billawila.
Okay, and would you then quit your job, Lilli, I assume?
Yes, yes. It was never, maybe I should also say this, in South Africa, before kids, I thought I would be one of those career moms. I would be okay to drop my kids at a daycare and just say bye and go and do my job. But once they arrived, it was very traumatic to me to leave my kids. And I realized I do not want to leave my kids to someone. I want to be the one raising my kids. So it was actually a big prayer for me. I think at least once a week I would cry and I would pray, please, Lord, let me be the one to bring up my kids. And so for me, having a job was really just to put the food on the table.
Yeah.
But the actual thing was, I wanted to be home with the kids. It was our decision. We knew we could make more money and we could be financially more stable if I would go out and do it, have a job. But it was more important to spend the time with our boys, and then moving to another country where English is the main language. It was even more important to be at home, to teach them Afrikaans and to bring them up in the Afrikaans household culture sort of thing. Yes, so it was always just a temporary thing for me to work.
Yeah, and I think what also forced us to, well, not forced us, but what helped us make the decision for Lilli to be at home and be stay at home mum, is that we knew it's going to be a traumatic event for the boys going at the age of 1 and 2, to migrate. And because we went from Townsville, and we went from Townsville to Brisbane, from Brisbane we moved from the one house to another house, and then we moved up to Billawila. We knew that we need to have at least something that can anchor them. And although it cost us financially, in the sense of we didn't have another income, I think at the end of the day, it was a good decision for us that Lilli stayed at home and looked after the boys.
Yes.
So how did the move from Billawila go to, what's the one you're in now? I can't remember. Baralaba. The names are so close to each other.
Yeah. Yeah, so what happened is my contract ended with Redeemer Lutheran College, and they went through a process of changing the direction that the school wanted to go. So they restructured. So basically my time at the school ended. And that was for me personally was quite dramatic, or not dramatic, but somewhat traumatic. Yeah. Because here we are in the middle of central Queensland. There's no supply teaching opportunities really, because there's 3 schools maybe, and and all other towns are more than 50 kilometers away from us. So it was a bit of a uncertain time for me.
You questioned our decision to actually come to Australia.
Yes.
You asked me the one day, did we make the right decision to come to Australia?
Yeah. So I would actually like to elaborate a little bit on that just now. But what happened is I then started to work as an assistant nurse at one of the old age homes there. So I took care or helped the nurses take care of people that can't take care of themselves. So, literally people that were bedridden, help them to get out of bed, dress.
Wash.
So that was once again a very humbling situation for me, but it was such a fulfilling job to help people that can't help themselves. But I still did some TRS teaching throughout the time. which then led me to get in contact with a guidance officer that works at 2 different schools, one in Bilawila, one in Beralaba. She then asked me, would I be able or willing to do some TRS or supply teaching in Beralaba? I said, yeah, it's not too far away. It's just 100 kilometers. So it's just an hour drive.
It's just an hour drive.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of people that do more than an hour commute in bigger cities. But it's 14 kilometers, takes 100, an hour. Anyway. And so I ended up at this school, and the principal loved the way that I built relationship with the kids. And she said, no, I want you on my team. Here's a contract. I would like you to take this contract. And it was for us somewhat of a no-brainer. It's a permanent position. It's in a state school. It's a secure job. And that's basically how we moved from Bilawila to Beralaba.
I just want to say, I didn't want to move. Yeah. I was up to here with moving. We counted last year, in 10 years of marriage, this is our 11th house that we moved to.
Oh,
so
wow.
I was dead set against moving, but that's another part of our story as well, where I developed anxiety, which is partly due to migration, the trauma of migrating, but also I think it was because of undiagnosed prenatal depression. So I think that was the start of it, my mental health being not in a good place, and then we migrated. So that traumatic experience of migration, because your country is suddenly dead, your family is dead, because you can't really see them, and although you can speak to them, it's not the same. Your culture is dead, your language is dead, and so it's that trauma of everything that you knew as familiar is not there anymore. And something as simple as standing in front of a shelf and deciding what sort of tomato sauce you're going to take home, it sounds so trivial, but it's the taste of your culture and the taste of your country, that everything was new, and you're still thinking in rands, and this thing cost $4, so that's 40 rand, and it just, for you it seems so much for something very small, but it takes time to get into a new mindset. So that is one of the reasons why I didn't want to move, is because I developed anxiety. And because of the stress, Jurie's gallbladder also decided he had enough. But so it was that as well. So it wasn't just one thing. It wasn't just migration. It was one thing on another, just put me in a very bad mental place. So that was I just said to you, I don't want to move. I cannot move. I cannot pack a box. But with this new position came a paid move where they get in removalists to do everything for you. And if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have moved. I don't know what we would have done. I would have said, no, I'm staying here. You can travel every day. But yes, that helped a lot.
So how long ago was that? How long have you been?
End of 2018.
Yeah. So I've been teaching now for almost 3 years at Beralaba State School. Because of the way that the rental market works in Australia, we needed to stay another 6 months in the other house, still in Bilawila. So for the first 6 months, I drive in and out of Bilawila every single Bilawila every single day. So I drove about 200 kilometers each day, about 2 hours of commute. To get to the school, do the teaching, do my normal work day, and then go back to Bilawila. So it was because of the rental, but also Envia was in kindy by that stage, and we started to make some friends in Bilawila. So that we constantly juggled the tension between security for the boys, comfort for the boys, and our responsibility to develop or get accepted and be part of the community in financially and other ways.
So 3 years in the spot that you're at now.
Yes.
Do you feel like you have now settled into Australia?
Yeah,
Yes.
most definitely.
Yes.
But I just want to roll back a bit, because Lily talked about the anxiety that she went through. For myself as well, it was especially the time at Redeemer Lutheran College, when I knew that my time at that school will come to an end. It was also a very dark time for me, emotionally, as well as what is the word I'm looking for? Mentally, yeah. I actually, some thoughts of suicide actually started to come, pop up. Just things of, would it just not be better for me to just give up?
Because then your family will be looked after, because we can have the life insurance. That sort of thinking. Yeah.
Even though that might not be true, that was the thought that I had.
Yeah.
And that's also at that stage when I doubted, have we made the right decision to come to Australia? I called back, or I called my mom and just talked a little bit with her, and I asked her, did we make the right decision? Should we not come back? And my mom vehemently, I think vehemently.
It's a big word. Yes, it
is. She said, no, you do not dare pack your bags and come to South Africa. There's nothing for you guys here.
We will not take you back.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was, but I must say, that's a big shift from my mother when we first broke the news that we're coming to Australia. She flipped out. She flipped the lid and just like, you guys are going to leave us. And she was just so shocked that we would want to move out of South Africa. And she said random stuff like, oh, when the oceans rise up, Australia will be the first country that's underwater. And it was just such a heated exchange that my dad actually needed to tell us, okay, whoa, let's just settle down. Let's, walk away, come back and talk about it later. So my mom, going from one point of she does not want to lose us and lose access to her newest grandchildren, to a mum that went and said, do not even think about coming back to South Africa.
So what do you think changed her mind in that 3 or so years time?
Yeah, but that says it was 2 years. I think that we've been in Australia.
It was 2 years.
I think
a first reaction was an emotional reaction. Yes. I think it was our kids. Now, we are both the babies in both our families, 5 children. The laat lammetjies, the unplanned kids that came through, So our parents, your mom actually said to me one day, this is the first time she had a really good relationship with her grandkids, because we went out of our way to make sure that they could visit us often. They both sets of grandparents are retired, so they can just get into the car and come to us. So I think it was an emotional response. For the first time, she really bonded with grandchildren, and now suddenly we want to go away.
Yeah, so that's how we perceived it. And I think once we were out of the picture, and my mom started to talk to other friends that have kids that also migrated, she realized that almost anyone that she talks to about kids that have gone to Australia would say that for them, they think it was one of the best decisions that they could make.
But also something economically happened in South Africa. It was with President Zuma and all his shenanigans. But something economically happened in South Africa. Small businesses closed for some reason. I can't remember, but it was because of that. It was a financial thing where she said, thank goodness that my youngest child is in a place where they are financially stable and they are in a place that they are looked after, safe. Yeah.
And just to close that story off, mom and dad then came and visited us just before COVID. So it was not this December, the December
before. End of 2019, beginning of 2020.
Yes. So over the December holidays, they came and visited us. and you could see them get at peace, or you could see peace enter their hearts that their kids are okay. By that stage we were living in Bralaba. I was working at the school. The kids were in school, and you could see they relaxed, and they're like, okay, no, fine. They were successful. They've been successful. They've made it, and they left with a lighter load than when they came emotionally, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So they are in support, obviously, now of you being here.
Yes.
What do they teach as well? Are they teachers or not?
My dad was a pen pusher his whole life. He worked for 30 years at a co-op, a farmers co-op at Leeudoringstad, that small town that I mentioned. And Mom worked for 26 years or something like that at a pig farm just outside of Leeudoringstad. So by that stage, both of them retired when I was still at university. So for most of my working career, they've been retired.
And obviously your children speak Afrikaans as you do at home. How did they find learning English or getting part of the community that speaks English? Was it an easy or a difficult transition?
No, kids are so amazing when it comes to languages. Somewhere we read that a kid can pick up even 5 languages at home. So if there's like a grandmother that speaks one type of language, anyway, if there's 5 adults in the house that can speak each a different language, apparently kids can pick up 5 different languages. Like a sponge can pick up water. So they've actually adapted far better than what we thought. We can, however, say, from the other side, because Lily stayed at home, we can see how well developed their Afrikaans is in comparison to some friends of ours who they started to work immediately when they came to Australia, and their kids went into daycare almost on day 2 when they were in Australia. And they are predominantly English speaking, although mom and dad speaks Afrikaans at home. Where our kids speaks Afrikaans, it might be a little bit, we call it mingles. So it might be a very, grammatically it's usually wrong. Because they shift the verbs and the nouns around and whatever. But they do speak Afrikaans. But we also force them. We would say, if they use too many English words, we would then play dumb, like, no, sorry, we don't understand. Sê weer, skus jammer, sê weer.
I think the setting in Australia is very good. You think stay at home mom, what do you do with yourself the whole day? But I found that I was very busy going to playgroup, going to the library when they have their weekly session where they read books and do crafts. We were very much involved into the community of other stay-at-home moms. And so the kids had lots of exposure to English. So, and then of course Kindy. I sent Emvia, our eldest, to Kindy, not because I wanted to get rid of him, but for 2 reasons. One, to sort of get into the hang of going into school. But for the second reason is to see if he would be okay being in an English environment the whole day. But he was fine. He was okay. In fact, their teachers will sometimes say to me, so one in year 1, the other one in year 2, that sometimes they forget that our kids are not English first language, because they are doing very, very well at school. Yes, so I think it's for me, it's a bigger struggle to keep Afrikaans alive. Luckily, we can, through Queensland State Library, we can order Afrikaans books. So I make sure that we have lots of Afrikaans books. We listen to Afrikaans stories. Of course, we talk Afrikaans.
We've done a podcast, Afrikaans podcasts of RSG's website, or from other podcasts, whatever. So we just it was a decision of ours to keep Afrikaans alive in the house, and because we value that, we obviously look for opportunities and ways of cultivating that culture and that language.
Yes. And I think because we are proud of our culture and our language, you can see it in our voice, because if they talk to other kids, especially the elders, he will also be like, that is Afrikaans. We talk Afrikaans at home. So they are also very proud of the fact that they can talk another language.
Oh, that's so sweet. Okay, so Lilli, your name is easy in English. Lilli is like an English name, essentially. Jurie, please tell me, how do they pronounce your name here?
Well, usually if they, more than often when they see my name on an email and they respond to it, they would say, "Good day, Julie." So they for some reason miss the R and then think it's Julie, because that's the exact same spelling, except for the the R and the L that swaps over. So I've been called Julie many a times over email, so written correspondence. When it's written and the person needs to read it out loud while I talk to them, like over customer service or something, they might say Jurie. And what I've been doing now, I've actually picked up an old nickname. I dusted off an old nickname a friend of mine gave me back in South Africa. His name is Johan. So I started to call him Joe, and he then started to reciprocate that. So we would call each other Joe, and whenever we visit each other, we would call each other Joe. And so every time I order coffee now or something, I just say Joe. That's just so much easier. But I actually want to test this one thing, because Yuri Gagarin was the first man in space. Next time I'm going to order coffee and they ask me for the name to write it on the cup, I'm just going to say Spaceman. Just because I know Jurie, they don't get Yuri. And like I said, I just want to test them and see, will they write Spaceman on the cup of coffee when I order coffee? But yeah, they do struggle.
And how do they do with Verster? What did I say?
Oh no, it's Verster.
Verster or something.
Verster.
So the kids at school just call me Mr. V, and I'm fine with that.
Yeah. I agree. That's an easier one.
Yes, if we know people long enough and they would ask us about our names and our surname, then we would say to them, well, the correct way to pronounce it is Verster, which means from the stars and so on. So then it becomes an interesting conversation, but no, it's now Verster.
Yeah. The R just ties them up.
And your boys' names are quite interesting too. Envia, how do they say Envia?
So when if they hear it, it's fine, it's Envia. You can see they do take a second or two to think about how do you or how would you spell this name. But as soon as they see the initials on the paper, then they really get confused, because it's an M and a W. Then we just explain to them that a W we pronounce as a via. So then usually they ask, so how's it that they've got M and a W, which then leads into the conversation of, no, it's my dad's name, her dad's name. And I always liked what I call double clutch names. So the DJ, the CJ, the JP, Pierre. I like those sort of names. And that's how we decided on Envia. Envia is actually not the biggest issue for me personally. They consistently they don't say Ivan, they say Ivan or Ivan. And that for me is a bit, I almost every single week I go to a teacher or a colleague of mine and say, no, it's Ivan. And they go, Ivan is like, no, short, Ivan.
And how do you spell it? IVAN?
Yes. So, but then we get to parade, which is like the assembly, and Ivan or, one other pronunciation. So we just usually roll our eyes and smile, and it is what it is.
I had an interesting conversation with the one kid in class just before school holidays. And he asked me, why is Envia's name Villain? Like, a bad guy. And I just had to laugh. I'm like, it's not Villain. It's like villain. William. So the Afrikaans way of pronouncing William is Willem. Oh, and he's like, I thought you called him villain. And it's like, no.
Oh, that's so sweet, actually. Oh, children. So tell me, what is the best thing for you about living in Australia?
For me, it's the experience of a new country and a new culture, and it feels like you're in South Africa. The climate is very much like South Africa.
Reasonably the same, yeah.
Yeah, well, here we just die of the heat. But no, it's just everything is new. So we get to learn about new animals, all the marsupials, kangaroos. I don't think there's any marsupials in South Africa.
No.
Yeah, and I think, so that a new type of flora as well. If you look at all the eucalyptus trees, and like I said, a new culture, and just to learn about everything that is new here. That's what I enjoy.
I would say career-wise, what I enjoy the most about Australia is that it feels like they honor hard work. Where in South Africa, as a teacher, I will need to make a comparison. Compared to Australia, it seems to me, well, at least the school that I taught at in South Africa, that there's not as collegiality as it is here. Where here you can almost call any teacher at any school and say, listen, I'm from this school, I need help. And they're like, yeah, well, I'll send you this resource. You can talk to this person. Here's an email for that person. So the network of assistance, or the network ability, if that's even a word, feels to me more vibrant here in Australia. And now that I'm in a small school, we're about 114 kids, about 11 staff members. The school is all the way from K to year 10. So it's a lot of grades for not a lot of kids. I have the opportunity to take on a lot of responsibility, which is putting my career somewhat in a boost mode. So I can climb the ladder far quicker in a smaller school out here in the sticks than in a bigger city. So for me, I would say, like I said, career-wise, it has been very fulfilling now that I've gotten a permanent position in a state school. And because I'm willing to work and just put in that hard yaka. Yaka is a Aboriginal word here, which means work. So willing to put in that hard yaka, I can develop my skills very quickly. That I find very fulfilling.
I can say another thing. When we moved to Australia, of course, you learn about Aboriginal people outside of Australia.
Yes.
And can I just say that I pronounced it wrong? We used to say in South Africa Aborigines, and they do not like that. But our first couple of years in Australia, I didn't see a lot of Aboriginal people.
Yeah, that's not.
And I questioned whether they actually are still a lot of Aboriginal people around. But now we live very close to Aboriginal community. And like my mom reminded me the other day, I've always been very interested in other cultures. So this for me is really amazing to get to know a culture that is very old. And although they've got a very sad history, just to learn how they see the world, how they do things. And like you were saying now, yaka, to learn their words. So that's another thing that I really, really like, is working with the Aboriginal kids.
Yeah, I just want to jump in that one as well. Our school, although it's in a white town, demographically, Baralaba is about, I would say, 90% white. There's here and there a few Aboriginal families. Wirrabinda, our sister town, that is an Aboriginal community. So they are about, I would say, on the other side of the spectrum, they're about 95% Aboriginal.
Or Indigenous.
Indigenous, yes.
Yeah.
And so our school get a lot of kids from that community. So our school is 65% Aboriginal. I teach in the high school. We only have 2 Caucasian kids, where all the rest, out of 36 students, are all Indigenous. They are Indigenous students. All right, I'm tripping up over the grammar. Yeah. Where was I going with this? So it is. I find it interesting that for me, it's very. I don't want to say comforting, but it's very. It's very similar to be teaching here than in South Africa, because the first school that I taught at was a school that catered a lot for some of the Black kids in the community. And I think because of the fact that we are used to a multicultural setting in South Africa, it was easy for us to adapt at this school and just welcome the kids, or just be more warm towards the kids. Because the Australians might say what they want to, but some of them still have very deep-seated racism, and we do see it, unfortunately, in our community. And that's also one of the things that I like about our community, because it's a challenge for us. We want to bridge that divide, that community divide between Baralaba and Wirrabinda. And I think for us, I don't want to say we are the ambassadors, but we somewhat see ourselves as the quote unquote ambassadors that can hopefully be a uniting force between these communities. So because of that, that's our holistic view of why we love it being here in Baralaba specifically, is the fact that I love teaching these kids. It's a challenge, because a lot of them are unfortunately behind on the academics because of the situation, or the demographical situation that they might find themselves in. But it's very fulfilling.
It is,
because it's a challenge, and it's as I said, there's a lot of support for us, and I think I've said enough.
I just want to say one more thing is I'm not a stay-at-home mom anymore. With my kids now in school, I knew I had to make a career change, because in South Africa, I studied hospitality management and I loved it. I worked in a 5-star lodge near Tabazimbi, dream job. And then I met him. So I knew I had to make a career change at some point in my life. I come from a family of educators. And my mom always wanted me to be a teacher, but I didn't want to be a teacher right now. And this is where Australia is amazing, where it gives you the opportunity to be a teacher assistant or a teacher aide. So I studied teacher aide, and that's what I do now. So I have the advantage of, yes, I have to go to school a bit earlier, but I don't have that extra planning that a teacher necessarily has. So for the moment, this is fine. I would like to one day study education, so be a teacher. But for here and now, being a TA, a teacher aide, is the best. So that's what I'm now. I'm a TA. I work at the same school with the boys.
How lovely is that? Yeah. So you all go to the same school every morning and come back home basically the same time.
Yeah. So going from a position where she needed to commute an hour on public transport in Brisbane, me commuting between Biloela and Baralaba for an hour, now we can walk within 5 minutes to our to the job.
Yeah, it's too far to drive. Now it's too far to walk, but too close to drive.
Yeah.
So we ride our bikes. That's what we do.
Cool. If you could do it all over again, would you?
Yes.
Yes and no. Yeah, yes and no, because it is yes in the sense of we can see the benefit that we we are really blessed where we are, and we consider our blessings, we count our blessings every single day, because it's important for us to not forget that there are people that struggle out in the world. We know that it's going tough in South Africa in certain places. So in that aspect, yes, but in the trauma that we went through and the fact that we we can't just call Oma and Opa and say, hey, do you guys want to come over for the weekend? We're a bit tired. We want to do, you know, something, or we can't go and drop them off, or that weighs very, very heavy on our hearts. So that's why it's a bittersweet thing. It's a yes and a no.
Okay, I'm with you on that, yes. I think there's another part of our journey that we also have to share, is that we didn't come out of our own willing. This is actually a journey of faith for us, where in 2011, so that's 10 years ago, we had a prophecy where someone said, you will one day go to another country, to another nationality, another culture.
Yeah, we will basically live in another
country. And living in South Africa, you always think, oh, we're going up in Africa. We have to be missionaries and go and preach to dark Africa. And we were part of ministry then. So since then, our lives has taken a different turn. But this for us is a faith journey. So when this thing happened where we thought, Australia, it's a first world country, do they need God? I mean, so our prayer life was like, really, Lord, do you want us to go there? But now that we're here, we know Australia is a very secular country. It's more difficult for me to bring my boys up in the Christian faith than what it would have been in South Africa.
Yeah.
We have to work harder to teach our kids about the Bible and what is the truth, because the evolution, and if you think about things that is so against what we believe, is so prevalent out here. We have to really make sure that we lay the foundation very well in our boys' lives. So it's a faith journey actually for us. So that's why I would say, yes, I will do it again, because we have been called by God to come to Australia, to be the light to the darkness.
And that's why it wasn't too difficult for us to go to Australia with only $650 in the back pocket, no job there, only 4 suitcases, because it was a leap of faith for us.
Yes.
Just to hammer the nail in a little bit deeper, the total cost, we worked out the total cost for us to go from South Africa to here, of the migration process cost us about $15,000. About $15,000. So that's, the visa, which was about $7,500, plane tickets, getting a car, being in Australia and being economically active.
So from the start of the process, paying for the agent, to the end where you are settled.
Yes, was about $15,000. And from that $15,000, we only paid about $3,500. So that's 35,000 rand. The rest of it was given to us. We didn't go and ask anyone for any money. I didn't go and make any loans for any money. Every single time I thought of going and ask someone money, I just definitely felt God say, no, don't go and ask for money. And because I could have gone and asked my brother. My oldest brother does very well for himself. My dad did very well for himself. He was as I said, he worked for 30 years in one company. So by the time he retired, he was very high up in this company. So we could have asked your mom for money. But as I said, every single time I wanted to open up that door just slammed shut in my face. And the day before we needed to pay for the visa, 70,000 Rand was paid into our bank account. We know who the person is.
But we didn't ask.
Like I said, we didn't go to anyone and ask them for any money.
Wow. And this is South African people.
This is now South Africa. So this is now,
5 years ago, 6 years ago.
Yeah, 6 years ago, basically.
And those people are still in South Africa?
Yes.
And do they follow what you're doing and how you're going? Are you still in touch with them? How awesome. So they can get the satisfaction of what they have been able to provide.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is a beautiful story. Oh, wow. Thank you so much for sharing that and sharing the reality of the struggles that not everybody, but a lot of South Africans do go through. Because as you said, sometimes when people come here, they come with a wrong mindset. They think that the red carpet will be rolled out for them and they'll just walk into everything that's paid for them in Australia is just waiting for South Africans to come on board. It's actually not quite like that. You got to work hard, put in your hard yakka, as you said, and a country with lots of red tape. But that's why we're here, because it is regulated. People do follow the rules, and that makes it safe and secure and manageable for us to have our little families here and raise them.
So I think whenever someone asks me, because you know how it is, friends of ours might say, oh, I've got a friend that they want to migrate to Australia. Can I give your number to them? And when I usually have a conversation with them over WhatsApp or whatever social media we use, I usually tell them, listen, you guys need to make sure why you want to come. Because we've met and we know of people that they thought, oh yeah, no, we'll just go to Australia, it will be great, and then they get here and their marriage crashes, or
it's not what they thought.
Yeah, and then within 2 months they pack up and go back to South Africa. Then they are jobless, unemployed in South Africa because they lost their job there. So I always tell people, make sure, what is your motivation? Have a clear goal, because Lilli and myself said, if we get on that plane, we better stay here until we get our citizenship. Once we have our citizenship, then if we want to go back to South Africa, we can, because then we know that we are always welcome back in Australia. So that was a goal from the beginning. And yes, we did doubt it. As I've said, I've struggled with, thoughts of suicide. Although it was fleeting, it was still thoughts that I needed to struggle with or deal with. Lilli going through her anxiety and whatever. But because we have had this goal, and we also are, as you've heard, we take our faith seriously. Because of these structures that we've built around ourselves, we were able to push through. We were able to get to this point where we now can sit and have this conversation with you and say, yes, we've made it. I'm successful in my job. Lilli is developing her career. My boys are settled. They are making friends. We are welcomed by the community. We are loving the fact that we work with Indigenous Australians, and it's very fulfilling. But it is hard yakka.
Yes.
Okay, hard yakka is good because at least, as you said, you get fulfillment out of it, and you get people thank you for, they realize what you put in, and often we do things and it just gets not acknowledged. So it helps if you actually do it with the right heart and mindset, and you're able to make a difference. That's a lovely story. Thank you so much for sharing with us. I do appreciate you. And there will be so many South Africans who will watch this and go, I'm glad to hear that it is not always as easy as you think in the beginning, because now their frame of mind would be right, that they know to expect a bit of a hard time when they make the move over first. It's not just smooth sailing.
No, it's not.
But later on, as you've just shown to us, if you persist and you persevere, things work out in the end if you just hang in there. And faith is such a big thing as well.
Yeah.
I hope you enjoy your long weekend and your time with the boys, and I hope, have you got some water that you can jump into somewhere, because it's so warm on that end of the world?
Well, today is a bit cool for us, so no, I know there's a lot of families down by the river, but
we've got a beautiful river that runs right past our town, so oftentimes we in the river. Some people say, oh, you need to be careful of the alligators, but there haven't been any alligators in this river since 1956, I think, the last one was spotted. So no alligators. We happily jump into the water.
The biggest thing for us to do at the moment is we had a mouse
plague. Yeah.
Mouse plague in our town. So we are just trying to clean our house. So it's just he's been busy in the garage. We've taken everything out. And I'm starting room by room. So this is the other thing. We don't have people cleaning our house. It is all our responsibility to do it. And I love it. I have no problem. I've never had a problem. Even though I grew up on a farm and we had 2 domestic workers in our house because we had a huge house. I don't have a problem cleaning my own house, but people should know that it is even harder yucca, because you do your full-time job and then you come home and then you're full-time mom, full-time cleaner, full-time cook and bottle washer and everything. Yeah.
It
So
doesn't
that is
end,
what we're
does it?
doing today, is we're cleaning. That's all.
Oh, well, thanks again so much for sharing your story. I do appreciate it. And hopefully we can catch up with you again in a few years' time and you can share with us how things have changed for you.
Yeah.
All right, guys, take care.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. So thank you so much for joining me today. If you had fun, please remember to hit that subscribe button, and then it'll make sure that you never miss a thing. I'll see you same time and same place next week. Bye for now.